At our last big family gathering, which included extended family, there was an argument between my brother's wife and me. I was in charge of making up leftover plates for anyone to take home if they wanted. I gave John, my brother, and Lucy, his wife, 3 plates of food including the leftovers of the dishes they brought with them. I gave them to John to put in his cooler in his car before they left. The next day I got a call from Lucy asking if I gave my brother the food, which I said I did. She told me there was only 1 plate that was half empty instead of the 3 plates and 2 Tupperware boxes I had actually given my brother. I was confused and said John took them off the counter, so ask him. Well, John told Lucy I had refused to give them the extra food and kept it for myself. Lucy was not pleased by this and told everyone in our family that I had stolen their food. I maintained my innocence the entire time because this isn't what happened. If that was all it was, I wouldn't have minded. But Lucy took it way too personally. She began to insult my body and weight, saying I didn't need burgers and should have stolen the salad instead, and said she doesn't blame me for stealing because I'm so poor and work a dead-end job. Lucy's animosity didn't stop for over a year, and she would always bring it up any chance she got. I'm the one hosting this year, and I have not invited John or Lucy. When they asked why they didn't receive an invitation, I said, "Are you kidding?" and hung up. Not the most mature, but I was so shocked at their audacity to ask. My brother texted me to suggest a sit-down between myself and Lucy, but I didn't get the point of that since she will always think of me as a villain in this ridiculous story. It was then that my brother confessed that he ate all the missing food in the car and felt so embarrassed by it that he lied to Lucy about me refusing to give them the food. I was in awe. I knew he had lied, but not the details or why he lied. I told him he's a huge jerk here, and he needs to come clean to Lucy now. I guess he did because Lucy then called me, apologizing profusely. She said she had no reason to doubt my brother, and she was already feeling left out and an outsider, so she lashed out. I thanked her for her apology, but said I didn't forgive her. She said so many awful things to me over 2 missing plates of food. I said they still weren't invited to the gathering and that they are welcome to host their own, which I obviously wouldn't attend. This made my brother really mad. They were on speaker together. A few hours later, I got some text from our mom telling me to just get over it and invite Lucy and John. I just put my foot down and said if they show up, they won't be let in my home. The whole situation has caused a rift in the family. Half are telling me I can't not include my brother, and the other half are saying Lucy is a witch for her comments. Lucy and John are still very mad. Am I the jerk? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. The true jerk in this scenario is your brother. If he hadn't lied and owned up to being a gluttonous little piggy, none of what followed would have happened. He lied about you and threw you under the bus. He lied to his wife, and she said some very nasty and derogatory things about you which were uncalled for under any circumstances. She has at least apologized for being hateful and hurtful. If you can't move past it, you can't. However, these traditional get-togethers die out because of incidents like this one. People don't want to be around it. If you invite Anne, Bob, and Claire won't come. If you invite Diane and Ed, Frank won't come. It's a shame, and it is all because of your brother, the big fat liar. Comment 2. Not the idiot, but I'm confused why you didn't confront your brother much sooner. He is the worst jerk here. He caused it, watched the rift develop, and did nothing for a year. He has zero right to be angry with you. He owes the groveling apology, not just his wife. Equally, sister-in-law has zero right to be angry with you. She should direct her anger where it belongs, at her husband. Stop discussing with the rest of your family. It's none of their business. They can come to the event or not, but the discussion is closed. Now for the update, thanks for reading my last post. So after the whole fiasco with John and Lucy, things have only gotten more complicated. 3 days ago, I got a call from my mom. She was pretty upset and said that John and Lucy had decided to host their own gathering on the same day as mine. She was torn because she didn't want to choose between her kids. I told her she didn't have to choose, but she insisted that it wasn't fair for the family to be split up. I could hear the frustration in her voice, and it made me feel guilty. But I stood my ground. I told her that I wasn't going to change my mind about not inviting them. Later that day, I got a text from my cousin who said she was planning to go to John and Lucy's gathering instead of mine. She said she didn't want to take sides, but she felt like it was the right thing to do. I was hurt, but I understood. I told her it was fine and that I hoped she had a good time. But deep down, it felt like a betrayal. The next day, I got a call from my aunt. She said she had heard about the situation and wanted to offer some advice. She suggested that I try to make amends with John and Lucy for the sake of the family. She said that holding on to grudges would only make things worse. I appreciated her concern, but I told her that it wasn't just about the food. It was about the way Lucy had treated me and the things she had said. My aunt sighed and said she understood, but she hoped I would reconsider. That evening, I got a message from John. He said he wanted to talk and asked if we could meet up. I was hesitant, but I agreed. We met at a coffee shop and he looked genuinely remorseful. He apologized again for lying and for the way things had turned out. He said he never meant for it to get this bad and that he missed having me in his life. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, but I was still hurt. I told him that while I appreciated his apology, it didn't change the fact that Lucy had been awful to me for over a year. He nodded and said he understood, but he hoped we could find a way to move forward. The next day, I got a call from Lucy. She sounded different, more vulnerable. She said she wanted to apologize again and that she was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. She admitted that she had been feeling insecure and took it out on me. She said she was seeing a therapist and working on her issues. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, but I was still wary. I told her that while I appreciated her apology, it would take time for me to trust her again. She said she understood and hoped we could start fresh. That evening, I got a call from my mom again. She said she had talked to John and Lucy and that they were willing to make amends. She asked if I would consider inviting them to the gathering. I was torn. On one hand, I wanted to move past this and have a peaceful family gathering. On the other hand, I didn't want to just sweep everything under the rug. I told her I needed some time to think about it. The next day, I got a text from my brother. He said that Lucy had been really upset and that she was trying her best to make things right. He asked if I could find it in my heart to forgive her and give her another chance. I could see how much he cared about her and how much he wanted things to be okay. It made me think about my own feelings and whether I was ready to let go of the past. That evening, I decided to call Lucy. I told her that I was willing to give her another chance, but that it would take time for me to fully trust her again. She thanked me and said she understood. She promised to do her best to make things right and to be more mindful of her actions in the future. I could hear the relief in her voice, and it made me feel a little better. The next day, I called my mom and told her that I had decided to invite John and Lucy to the gathering. She was overjoyed and said she was proud of me for being the bigger person. I felt a sense of relief, but also a bit of apprehension. I hoped that things would go smoothly and that we could start to heal as a family. That evening, I got a call from my cousin. She said she had heard about my decision and that she was glad I was willing to give John and Lucy another chance. She said she was looking forward to the gathering and hoped it would be a fresh start for all of us. I felt a sense of hope, but also a bit of anxiety. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try. The day of the gathering arrived, and I was nervous. I hoped that things would go smoothly and that we could start to heal as a family. When John and Lucy arrived, there was a bit of tension, but we managed to get through it. We talked, laughed, and tried to move past the hurt. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As the evening went on, I could see that Lucy was making an effort to be kind and considerate. It made me feel a bit more hopeful about the future, but I also knew that it would take time for me to fully trust her again. I was willing to give it a try, but I also knew that I needed to protect myself and my feelings. In the end, the gathering was a success. We managed to come together as a family and start to heal. It wasn't easy, but it was a step in the right direction. I knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but I was willing to face them with an open heart and a willingness to forgive. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to be my siblings' free babysitter after raising them? Why, 36-year-old male, spent a lot of time basically raising my brother and sister. When I was 9, our parents separated for 8 months. Our mother spiraled during it. She pretty much just slept when she wasn't working. My siblings at the time were 2 and 3, and I spent a lot of time with them, made sandwiches for us at dinner time, got them to bed, tucked them in, and always woke Mom up or called Dad to come take care of them. They got back together, but when I was 13, Dad died. Mom spiraled worse than before. She worked, slept, and was gone most of the night, especially on weekends. I did everything for my siblings at that point, and when I was 15, I was able to work some weekends just to help pay for extras for us. It went on like that until I was 18 and left right after graduating high school. That seemed to be the kick in the butt Mom needed to get her shoot together. I have since done therapy and mended my relationship with her, but the aftermath is I just really don't want anything to do with kids now. The thought mentally drains me. My siblings have kids now and have wanted me to be involved since the first niece-nephew was born 6 years ago. I don't ignore them, I show up for their parties, and I'm nice when talking to them, but I don't draw out interacting with them. I don't act fake excited, and I don't want to go to their events. I don't have them over to my house, despite them and the rest of my family always suggesting I do because they're convinced I'd be a fun uncle. Recently, I was picking up my camping gear from my sisters, and my nephew asked to go with me, and I told him no, but definitely when he's older. When I was leaving, my sister said I should take the kids sometimes because they're always asking about me and my stuff, and suggested that she and brother-in-law come too if it'd help. I told her no thanks. She asked why I refused to be more present in my nieces' and nephews' lives, because she remembers I was a lot of fun with her and our brother. I told her it might have been fun for her, but I was doing what needed to be done to keep them happy. But it's okay if they remember it differently because they were so young. It's just after that, I don't want to be around young kids. She dropped it. Earlier today, our Nan texted to tell me no one would be upset if I skipped our cookout next week so I didn't get stressed out around all the kids. Was I wrong for telling her why I don't get more involved? Now for an update. Just got off the phone with Nan after I texted her earlier. It was a polite disinvite due to my sister telling her I don't want to be more involved with the kids because I am burnt out after raising them. Per Nan, it's selfish to be full of piss and vinegar over doing for family, and that's not family name's way. Your nieces and nephews need you like sister and brother did. If you can't put the bat aside, you don't need to be around the kids for now. We don't always want to show up for family for whatever reason, but we do it. I'm going to talk to my siblings, especially Sis, this weekend to clear this up. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot, because your sister clearly didn't drop it. She went overboard and is telling the family you don't want to be even around whenever her kids are around. You didn't come close to saying that. Time for a real sit-it-down with both siblings. Talk a little bit more about how it really was for you. Don't, of course, blame them for existing. Just let them know how much of your own childhood was taken, and the thought of being responsible for and entertaining young kids right now isn't appealing to you. But obviously you enjoy time with everyone. You merely expressed why you're not taking them camping for the weekend. She turned it into, "Hey everyone, Big Brother hates all kids, especially mine, so let's stay away." Comment 2, not the idiot. You might want to clarify it to your Nan though. Although I wonder where was she when you were making all those sandwiches? I was one of those siblings. My younger sibling used to call me Mom. It's hard. Right now, and due to the circumstances, a lot of pressure is being put on me and PTSD back to those days at home when I was Mom and facing so very much. Likely, I'm willing to bet that you popped a bubble for your sister because the caregivers protect the younger ones they didn't know. Now for the update. Thanks for all the comments from the last post. So I talked to my sister and brother over the weekend, and things took a turn I didn't expect. I went over to my sister's house on Saturday afternoon. She was in the kitchen and my brother was already there, sitting at the table. I could tell from the look on their faces that they were ready for a serious conversation. I started by explaining how Nan's text made me feel. I told them that it hurt to be called selfish when all I ever did was try to keep our family together. My sister looked at me with a mix of guilt and frustration. She said she didn't mean for Nan to disinvite me, but she was just venting about how she wished I was more involved with her kids. My brother chimed in, saying he understood where I was coming from, but also felt like I was missing out on being part of the family now. Then something unexpected happened. My sister broke down in tears. She confessed that she had been feeling overwhelmed with her own kids and was projecting her frustrations onto me. She said she felt like she was failing as a mom and was desperate for any help she could get, even if it meant pushing me into a role I didn't want. My brother admitted he felt the same way but didn't know how to express it without sounding ungrateful for everything I had done for them growing up. This was a turning point for me. I realized that my siblings were struggling in their own ways, and it wasn't just about me not wanting to be around kids. They were looking for support and were scared to admit they needed help. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and a bit of guilt. But mostly I felt a sense of understanding. They weren't trying to guilt trip me, they were just desperate for some relief. We spent the next few hours talking about our childhood and how it shaped us. My sister shared that she always felt guilty for not remembering much about our dad and relied on my stories to keep his memory alive. My brother said he felt like he owed me for stepping up when our mom couldn't. It was a heavy conversation, but it felt like a weight was being lifted off all our shoulders. I told him about my therapy sessions and how they helped me come to terms with our past. I explained that while I loved them and their kids, I needed to set boundaries for my own mental health. They seemed to understand, and we agreed to find a middle ground. I promised to be more present, but on my terms. They promised to respect my boundaries and not pressure me into doing things I wasn't comfortable with. The next day, I decided to go to the cookout. I figured it was a good opportunity to show my family that I was willing to make an effort. When I arrived, Nan gave me a look but didn't say anything. My sister and brother were more relaxed, and it felt like a fresh start. I spent some time with my nieces and nephews, showing them some camping gear and telling them stories about my trips. It wasn't as draining as I thought it would be, probably because I knew I had the option to step away if it got too much. Later that evening, my sister pulled me aside and thanked me for coming. She said she noticed a change in me and appreciated the effort I was making. I told her it was a two-way street and that I appreciated her understanding my need for boundaries. We hugged, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. As the night went on, I found myself reflecting on our childhood. I remembered a time when I was about 14 and our mom had disappeared for the weekend. I had to take care of my siblings, and I remember feeling so overwhelmed and scared. But I also remembered how my sister had hugged me and told me I was the best brother ever. That memory had always been bittersweet, but now it felt more sweet than bitter. It reminded me that despite everything, we had always been there for each other. The cookout ended on a positive note. My family seemed to understand my need for space, and I felt more connected to them than I had in years. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try and find a balance that worked for all of us. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for telling my dad? He can't give a speech at my wedding because he downplayed my deceased mom. My fiance and I, both in our 20s, are getting married in a month, and there's a dispute with my dad now. He claims I'm being unfair, but I wanted to get some thoughts on it. So Dad decided he was going to give a speech at the wedding without saying anything first. He had shared the contents of the said speech with his sister, my aunt, and she knew the speech would not sit well with me and mentioned his plan to me. So in this speech he already wrote, he talks a lot about how his wife is the love of his life, how amazing she is, etc. It's very similar to the speech he gave at their vow renewal 10 years ago. He hasn't shied away from expressing in front of me and to me that he never loved anyone like he loved his wife, how all his past relationships pale in comparison. And that includes my mom, who was his first wife, who left him widowed with an 8-year-old son at the time. To make it even more difficult to hear, the vow renewal was held on my 18th birthday, and I got to celebrate my birthday by hearing Dad talk about how Mom meant nothing because his second wife was so much better. They were married for 8 years at the time, but a lot of family and friends didn't attend their actual wedding, and they decided they'd basically have a second one to celebrate. They decided my birthday was the perfect time to do this. Anyway, the speech he wrote for my wedding had a lot of this content from what my aunt heard from my dad and read herself. She knew on my wedding day the last thing I needed to hear was how much he adores his wife when he does so in a way that basically said my mom meant nothing to him. I told him I knew about the speech and he didn't have permission to give the speech at my wedding. Dad asked why not, and I told him I didn't want him to use my wedding to praise his wife. He said she means the world to us, so why would I say that? I told him she means the world to him, but she pales in comparison to my mom, who meant the world to me and still does. I told him he might have decided Mom meant nothing, but that didn't mean I shared his feelings. He accused me of being sensitive and then said it seemed like I didn't care about his wife at all. And then he said she was a good mom to me for the 8 years she raised me. I told him she was never anything more than his wife. My mom died when I was 8, and I didn't get a new one. And the last thing I need to hear is how little she meant on my wedding day. Dad told me to be reasonable, and the parents of the bride and groom typically say something. I told him nothing he had to say had a place at my wedding, that this is mine and my fiance's wedding, not his. I told him to get married again if all he wants to do is praise his wife. But it was not happening at mine. He told me to stop acting like a little boy and grow up. I left. Then his wife called crying about the fight Dad and I had, which led to Dad calling me again and telling me to grow up again. Am I the jerk? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You are not the idiot 100%. Your dad is behaving like a narcissist. It's all about him, apparently as usual. Him calling you sensitive is a giant red flag and typical of someone who thinks only his feelings matter. I would have people ready to escort him out in real time if you still even want to include him. I'm so sorry this is the one parent you have left. At some point, you should read Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. It will help you going forward see a lot of his likely behavior for what it is, as well as identify any unhealthy habits you may have learned, but don't want to bring into your adult healthy relationships. I'm sorry your mom passes. If I were you, I'd reserve a seat with her photo flower on it to honor her memory at your wedding and reception, front and center, and have the officiant include her in their remarks. Congratulations! Comment 2. Not the idiot. It's your wedding. Your father is the one being insensitive here and acting like a little boy. Even if he had good intentions when he wrote the speech, your talk with him should have made it very clear that it would be inappropriate to say those things at your wedding. He needs to swallow his pride and accept that on your wedding day, everything should be focused on elevating you and your fiancé, not his wife, and certainly not on downplaying the importance of your mother. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So a lot has happened since I last posted. After the argument with my dad, I decided to take a few days to cool off and think things through. My fiancé and I had a long talk about the situation, and she was incredibly supportive. She suggested we have a small, private meeting with my dad to try and resolve things peacefully. I agreed, hoping that maybe a calm discussion would help him understand my perspective. We arranged to meet at a local cafe, a neutral place where we could talk without any interruptions. My dad showed up with his wife, which I wasn't thrilled about, but I decided to keep my cool. I started by explaining again why his speech was hurtful to me. I told him that my wedding day should be about celebrating my relationship with my fiancé, not about his love for his wife. I also reiterated how painful it was to hear him dismiss my mom, especially on such an important day. My dad listened, but I could tell he was getting frustrated. His wife chimed in, saying that she felt hurt by my words and that she had always tried to be a good stepmother to me. I acknowledged her efforts, but made it clear that my feelings about my mom were non-negotiable. My dad then accused me of being stuck in the past and not appreciating the family I have now. The conversation quickly became heated, and we ended up leaving without any resolution. The next day, I got a call from my aunt. She had heard about the meeting and wanted to offer some advice. She suggested that I write a letter to my dad, explaining my feelings in detail. She thought that maybe if he had time to read and reflect, he might understand better. I wasn't sure if it would work, but I decided to give it a try. I spent the entire evening writing the letter, pouring out my heart and explaining why my mom's memory was so important to me and why his speech felt like a betrayal. I sent the letter the following morning and waited anxiously for a response. In the meantime, my fiancé and I continued with our wedding preparations. We decided to make a few changes to the ceremony to ensure it was a day focused on us and our love. We also talked about having a backup plan in case my dad decided to go rogue and give a speech anyway. A couple of days later, my dad called. He said he had read the letter and understood where I was coming from, but he still felt that his wife deserved recognition. He proposed a compromise. He would give a shorter, more neutral speech that didn't mention his wife or my mom. I was hesitant but agreed to consider it. We decided to meet again to discuss the details. During our second meeting, my dad seemed more willing to listen. We went over the speech together and I made sure it was something I could live with. He agreed to stick to the revised version, and I felt a bit more at ease. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that he might still try to slip in something about his wife. As the wedding day approached, I found myself increasingly anxious. My fiancé noticed and suggested we have a backup plan ready. We decided that if my dad deviated from the agreed-upon speech, I would politely interrupt and thank him for his words before moving on to the next part of the ceremony. It wasn't ideal, but it gave me some peace of mind. The wedding day finally arrived, and everything was going smoothly. My dad gave his speech, and to my relief, he stuck to the revised version. It was short, sweet, and focused on my fiancé and me. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, and I was able to enjoy the rest of the day. However, the real test of loyalty came later that evening. During the reception, my dad's wife approached me. She was visibly upset and asked if we could talk privately. We stepped outside and she told me how hurt she was by the whole situation. She felt that I had disrespected her and that my dad had been caught in the middle. She asked me to apologize for the way I had treated her. I was taken aback. I had been so focused on my own feelings that I hadn't considered how she might be affected. I realized that while my loyalty to my mom was unwavering, I also needed to acknowledge the role my dad's wife had played in my life. I took a deep breath and apologized for any hurt I had caused. I explained that my intention was never to disrespect her, but to honor my mom's memory. She seemed to appreciate my words, and we had a heartfelt conversation about our complicated family dynamics. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a step towards healing. I realized that while my loyalty to my mom would never change, I could still find a way to coexist with my dad's wife. In the end, the wedding turned out to be a beautiful day, and I felt a sense of closure. I knew that my relationship with my dad and his wife would always be complicated, but I was hopeful that we could move forward with a better understanding of each other's feelings. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.